There's a story about two people who walk in the forest and they're suddenly confronted by a grizzly bear charging at them. And one of them begins to run away and the other asks him, "Why are you running? Don't you know you can't outrun a grizzly bear?" And the man that's running turns around and he says, "I don't have to outrun the bear, I have to outrun you." Now that's the attitude I think that some in the West have. They think that they can run away from the grizzly bear of terrorism and leave others behind to be gobbled up by it. But in fact, no one can outrun it. And the only thing you can do with this phenomenon that we saw in Amsterdam is to turn around squarely, face it, confront it, and defeat it. Now, that's a story that I remember hearing many years ago, told by a man who in fact later became Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. And I think it's worth repeating today just because I think there are people who believe they can outrun the Jews. And they will never outrun the grizzly bear of extremism because it hates them as utterly and completely as it hates us.
I mean, what can we do about this? I mean, 5 Tel Aviv football fans were hospitalised. At least 10 more were quite badly injured. The figure could be higher than that. And we've got, we saw horrible scenes of poor people lying on the floor and having their heads kicked in.
What we saw in Amsterdam was the greatest anti-Semitic attack that city had experienced since the Second World War. And don't take that from me, take that from the mayor of Amsterdam, who said that in the press conference. And what can we do about it? Well, Geert Wilders, as you mentioned, has said that the scum who planned this, who carried it out, need to be arrested, imprisoned, and where possible they should be deported. And the man is not, as he's often called, far right in this instance, he's just right. That is what needs to happen. I think that looking at the marches that are happening here, it's no coincidence that the things we heard in the videos that those thugs put out themselves in Amsterdam of their own crimes, and where have we seen that before? Well, we saw that on October the 7th, 2023, when the Palestinian terrorists who stormed into Israel to rape, kidnap, torture, murder, kill, we saw them broadcast their own acts. We saw the same thing happen in Amsterdam, and the things we heard them say sounded very familiar. Free Palestine. The flags we saw them wave looked very familiar. The PLO flag, now widely seen as the Palestinian flag. We're seeing all the same things. We're hearing all the same slogans. We're seeing them just one step further there in Amsterdam, and I think we'd be terribly foolish if we don't recognise that the fear that Jewish people and plenty of non-Jewish people have been feeling here in Britain in the face of these mobs, these crowds which are aggressive, they are intimidating, they're there to bully us. They're not there to express some peaceful future plan for coexistence between Jews and Arabs in the Middle East. It's not what they're calling for. They never call for it. They are uttering the same words that we heard in Amsterdam last night. And if Britain and other European countries want to avoid those sorts of scenes here, they need to just get real. This is coming here soon. This is something we can avoid and we must avoid, but it will involve some very difficult decisions. And Sir Keir Starmer has shown he was willing to make those against the bogeyman of the far right when it came to riots earlier on in the year, when he said that he would get those people in prison quickly. But he has never done that. Sadiq Khan has never instructed the Met Police to do that in London. This is something that hasn't happened under the last government or this government. And Jewish people, but more importantly, plenty of other people who won't be able to outrun that grizzly bear either, will want to see the government protect them. These people, even when they turn out in large numbers on the streets, are a minority. And they are an aggressive, bullying, shouting, intimidating minority. And they have absolutely no right to do that to the rest of us. People are welcome to their opinions. They're welcome to express them. There is freedom of speech in this country. But there are ways that we go about our lives in expressing our views, which isn't to try and bully and intimidate other people. You just have to accept that sometimes not everybody agrees with you, and you don't have to get more violent and more intimidating in order to try to quash their freedoms. And I think that's what's happening, and we've seen where that can lead last night. And as you said, it's this anniversary of Kristallnacht, so it's even more ominous that we saw this happen just when we did in Amsterdam. And now the Dutch are saying that they recognise, the King has said it, the Mayor has said it in Amsterdam, that they have failed their Jews. Well, it's great to hear them say that because it's true, but it's a bit late. We don't need to hear those sorts of words now. I want to avoid us hearing them here in the UK. As I wrote in my Spectator column, Jews will not be singing Don't Look Back in Anger or Imagine should that happen here. They'll be too busy leaving this country. And if Jews are starting to leave this country, People really need to worry about what's going to come for them next.
Yeah, and what I don't want to see any more of, do you remember at the beginning of these marches, straight after October the 7th, that when a lot of I saw it myself, loads of jihad signs, and the police went off and said, well, we've looked into this, and actually, you know, jihad doesn't necessarily mean kill people. It means it can be a call to spiritual meditation.
Yeah,
in other words, the police went out of their way to exonerate people who clearly wanted to kill Jews.
And I'll tell you one other thing. Amsterdam's not the first city on the list, and it won't be the last. I just want to, you know, just to refresh people's minds, because these things are so easily forgotten. Ilan Halimi was killed in France in 2006. He was kidnapped and tortured by a gang for being Jewish. And also in France in 2012, a Muslim extremist in Toulouse killed a teacher and 3 children in a Jewish school. In Brussels in 2014, a Muslim jihadist gunman killed 4 people at the Jewish Museum. In 2015 in Copenhagen, a Muslim extremist shot 1 person outside a synagogue during a bat mitzvah. In 2017, Sarah Halimi, a retired Jewish woman, was killed by a Muslim neighbour. Mireille Knoll, an 85-year-old Holocaust survivor, was murdered in her Paris apartment in 2018. She was stabbed to death by Muslim men. 2019, Halle synagogue shooting in Germany on Yom Kippur, Hamburg synagogue attack 2020, the Hypercachée hostage taking in Paris 2015. That list really truly goes on and on and on. And you know what I don't want to see on that list? London 2024. This is the time that we have to act. It's the time that all of Europe has to act. Jews need to be protected. Europe has a shameful history on this one, and it needs not to repeat itself.
Yeah, I haven't got much longer, Jonathan, but so we've got to cover the BBC's coverage of this. Yeah. I'm going to say this as well. At one point, Mail Online, the Daily Mail, said Israeli hooligans, something along the lines, Israeli football hooligans run riot in Amsterdam, you know. So that was actually kind of 180 degrees wrong. So here's the BBC's coverage. Israel sends rescue planes after clashes in Amsterdam. Underneath this is a picture of the riots. Police said it was unclear who was involved in the unrest as they were wearing dark clothing. The BBC also went on to report that the Israeli fans were looking for a fight. And more to the point, most of last night it didn't cover this at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's worse than that. It's not just that they're blind, they're willfully blind. Yeah. At this point, I think it's
That's impossible. What I meant, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's impossible to conclude that this is an accident, or maybe for some of them it's the result of some sort of groupthink inside the newsroom, and that, you know, this is self-fulfilling. But what they did with the reporting of Amsterdam, for example, the idea that it was clashes, the idea that any kind of behaviour from, let's, you know, face it, there are ultras in many football fan cohorts who do behave badly, and I'm sure that there could have been that sort of behaviour as well from the Maccabi fans. But that means that there should have been a pogrom. That means that that is what triggered a pre-planned set of hundreds, I've read, of people coordinating their attacks. In fact, the mayor of Amsterdam said that they were going to go after Bolt and Uber and the taxi unions because it was clear that there had been some involvement. The reports have been that these taxi drivers were actually using the technology of the taxi companies to coordinate their attacks and send the taxis around to chase Jews. This sort of thing is not a normal reaction. If it were, you would have seen people in violent mobs reacting to the tearing down of hostage posters for those Israelis who were taken by Palestinian terrorists last year in October. But of course you didn't see that. You might have seen protests. You didn't see people going out and being violent. I just think it's really important to remind everyone that they are coming for you next. They may be coming for us now, but they are coming for you next. And we cannot allow this to happen. The BBC needs to get real in presenting this to people, because most people understand what's going on, and there's only so long you can fool them with this sort of tit-for-tat clashes. They were asking for it, her skirt was too short sort of argument. There is no defence for a pogrom against Jews. The mayor of Amsterdam said this was the worst anti-Semitic attack in that city since the Second World War, and yet the BBC seems to have another opinion, that perhaps the Jews were asking for it.
They were looking
this
for
is disgusting.
They were looking. It is disgusting, Jonathan. And on that note, thank you very much for joining us. I wish we could talk longer, but all the best. Good to talk. Jonathan Sacerdoti, there, journalist, has written a big, powerful piece in The Spectator.